What kind of man hires a nanny without meeting her first? A cold, closed-off millionaire, a grieving father, or a man who simply doesn't know how to ask for help? And what happens when that nanny doesn't just care for his paralyzed daughter, but reawakens the entire house with a single dance? This is a story of Delaney, a wealthy CEO who built an empire but lost the heartbeat of his home. A man still haunted by the silence left behind after his wife's sudden death. And Maya Santiago, a soft-spoken caregiver with a gift for listening deeper than most ever do. But at the center of it all is Delaney, 8-year-old girl in a wheelchair, who hasn't stood since the day her mother died. Until now. How do you rebuild a family from grief? Can a child who's lost her voice find it again through music and movement? And what if the real healer isn't the adult, but the child herself? Stay with us as we unfold a story of quiet power, emotional reckoning, and the movement that changed everything. If this story touches you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's begin. The glass house on Somerton Ridge stood like a monument to solitude, perched above the Pacific coast in Lakehurst, Oregon. It caught the light just enough to look alive, but never warm. Inside, silence reigned with surgical precision. The floors gleamed without footprints. The walls held no family photos. And the dining table, long enough for 10, was set every morning for 2, but only one ever ate there. Delaney sat at the head of that table each day, black coffee in hand, blueprints and quarterly projections stacked beside his untouched breakfast. 45. Tall, deliberate, with a voice smooth like marble and just as cold. CEO of Archwave Technologies. The kind of man who built systems to replace emotions. He hadn't always been like this, but then again, grief doesn't ask for permission. It arrives uninvited and stays long after everyone else moves on. Across the hall, Delaney, 8 years old, watched the ocean from her wheelchair. Every morning, she positioned herself by the same west-facing window, her legs, once wild with cartwheels and ballet twirls, now rested beneath soft fleece blankets, unmoving. Her hands, however, were alive, tapping faint rhythms on her lap, almost imperceptible. Her eyes followed the horizon, but her mind seemed far away back in the before. A hollow knock echoed through the marble foyer. "Mr. Delaney," came a voice from the entryway. Soft but firm. It was Constance Hale, his house manager of nearly 2 decades, a woman who had once babysat Lila during meetings and now managed the silent routines of a broken household. "Yes." Graham didn't look up from his laptop. "She quit," Constance said flatly. Graham didn't ask who. He didn't need to. That makes 6, 7. In under a year, Graham closed the laptop with a crisp snap. Was it the schedule or the silence? She didn't say, but Lila hasn't spoken to her in 2 weeks, or to anyone. Really, Constance hesitated, except me. And even then, it's barely a sentence. She needs structure, not friends. His voice sharpened like the edge of a spreadsheet column. Constance folded her arms. She needs someone who sees her. Graham's jaw tensed. For a moment, something flickered across his expression. Not anger, not frustration, something closer to shame. But he buried it. Draft a new posting. Same parameters. Licensed in pediatric care. Flexible schedule. Non-smoker. Background in physical therapy. No personal boundaries crossed. No music. No improvisation. Stick to the manual. You wrote that manual, Graham, Constance said quietly. Not a doctor. I know what works, he replied. But his tone lacked conviction. She didn't press further, just turned and walked back down the hallway. The same hallway where Lila once used to run barefoot, giggling, asking her father to dance. That hallway had grown very quiet. Later that night, as rain smeared the glass walls in streaks of silver, Graham reviewed the last caregiver's resignation letter. It was brief, polite, avoidant. They all were. They never said what they really thought, that the house was cold, that the child was distant, that the father was unreachable, that grief had turned a home into a mausoleum. Upstairs, Lila lay awake. Her eyes traced the glowing constellations of her ceiling knot light, a gift from her mother, Juliet, before the accident. The stars didn't help anymore. The light no longer reached her heart. She shifted in her wheelchair just enough to pull a tiny music player from beneath her pillow. Its earphones were frayed, but she pressed one to her ear anyway. A violin melody, soft and aching, spilled into the silence. Her fingers moved again, 2 notes behind. Always, like memory, downstairs. Graham stood before Juliet's portrait. He rarely did, her smile carefree, mischievous, full of life, felt like an indictment now. He didn't speak to her anymore. "Tomorrow," he whispered finally, as if to himself, "we'll find someone new." But even he didn't believe it. Across town, in a small cottage behind a community garden, Maya Santiago sipped chamomile tea as she updated the last of her case notes. The folder on her screen read, Santiago, M. Pediatric Rehab. End of care reflections. She had just finished working with a 10-year-old boy recovering from a spinal tumor. It had been a difficult but beautiful 3 months. There had been tears and music. Always music. Her phone buzzed quietly. Unknown number. Lakehurst code. She answered. Ms. Santiago. Constance's voice came through, low and cautious. Yes, this is Maya. I'm calling from Somerton Ridge. We're seeking new caregiver for a private pediatric case. I've reviewed your file. Would you be open to discussing an urgent placement? Maya paused. She'd heard of the house. Everyone in Lakehurst had. She'd also heard rumors, a reclusive billionaire, a silent child, a string of failed hires, but then she said something unexpected. Tell me about the child, not the schedule, the child. There was a pause on the other end, and then Constance spoke. For the first time in over a year, someone asked not what Lila needed to do, but who Lila was. The following morning, Graham stood in the upstairs office, staring out over Somerton Ridge. The ocean shimmered with the illusion of peace, but inside him, the waters never stilled. Behind him, Constance was already scrolling through files on her tablet. Her fingers moved quickly, eyes scanning candidate profiles. No responses from the agency overnight, she said. 3 local nurses declined, and 2 said they're unavailable for in-home residencies. Graham folded his arms. Lower the salary requirement. Constance looked up sharply. It's not the money, Graham. He knew that, but he didn't say it aloud. What could he say? That people didn't want to work in a house where joy had gone to die. He returned to his desk and opened Lila's updated therapy report. She hadn't made progress in 6 weeks. No new muscle activation. No verbal communication. No engagement during sessions. The chart was a flat line. Still, he refused to let emotion dictate decisions. He lived by one rule now. You can't rebuild what you lost. You can only manage the damage. Just then, Constance's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down. Her brow lifted slightly. One more candidate just opened up. Independent practitioner. Licensed nurse. Background in pediatric rehab. With music therapy certification. Graham didn't react. She's based in Riverview. About 2 hours away. What's the name? Constance tapped the screen. Maya Santiago. Graham gave a slight nod. then turned away, already dismissing her in his mind. Music therapy. Another sentimentalist who'd likely talk about feelings and safe spaces. Call her, if she can follow the manual. Interview her, video only. The call connected just after noon. Maya appeared on screen, wearing a loose sweater, hair pulled into a braid, a soft glow of daylight behind her. She looked nothing like the sharp-edged professionals Graham usually interviewed, and yet she radiated a calm confidence he couldn't quite read. Constance introduced them, then quietly stepped out of frame. Graham leaned forward. "Ms. Santiago, you understand the requirements. I read the posting." "Yes," she said gently, "but I'd like to understand the child first. Can you tell me about Lila?" It wasn't a question he was used to. Most candidates asked about hours, housing, pay scale, liability waivers. But Maya didn't mention any of that. Graham hesitated. "She's 8. Paralyzed from the waist down after an auto accident last March. Spinal trauma. No further surgeries scheduled. She receives physical therapy daily. Standard exercises. Nothing beyond the prescribed routine." Maya waited. He noticed that. Waited like someone who didn't rush what mattered. "And emotionally?" she asked. Graham shifted. "Withdrawn. Selective mutism. Non-compliant with most non-structured activities. She doesn't engage with staff. But does she still play?" "Play," Graham echoed, like the word offended him. "Yes, children grieve differently. Some bury it in silence. Others bury it in imagination. Does she hide in stories, music, sketches? She has no time for distractions." Maya tilted her head slightly. "Children don't call it distraction. They call it survival." The silence between them stretched. Then Graham said, "This house is not a therapy playground. I need someone who can follow instructions, document progress, maintain routine. Nothing improvisational. I've had enough of that. I respect structure," Maya said simply, "but within structure, healing still requires connection. I can't do this job without getting to know her, and if she never opens up to you, then I'll wait. But I won't give up." Another silence. Graham finally spoke, this time quieter. "Can you be here tomorrow by 8 a.m.? "No. I'll leave by 5, Maya replied. "No instruments. I travel with a violin," she said. "It stays in its case until invited." Graham narrowed his eyes. And what if that invitation never comes? Then it waits. Something about the way she said that calm, patient, unafraid unsettled him. He hated being unsettled, but he didn't stop her. At 7:52 the next morning, Maya stepped through the heavy front doors of the Delaney house. The hallway smelled of lemon oil and quiet. Every light was cool white, every edge carefully designed. A nurse's station had been built into the downstairs office. Above it hung a calendar with Lila marked in bold black for every hour block. Maya's boots clicked softly on the marble floor as Constance led her to the guest wing. "This room is yours," Constance said. "Graham prefers you settle in before seeing Lila." Maya set down her bag. Then slowly, she opened the violin case. She didn't remove the instrument, just checked to make sure it had survived the drive. Then she closed it gently, like tucking in a sleeping child. "You really want this job?" Constance asked. Arms crossed, Maya turned to her, a soft smile on her lips. "I'm not here for the job. I'm here for the girl." Constance's expression softened. "Good, because she hasn't smiled in months." Maya nodded. "Neither had I. Once, Lila saw Maya before Maya saw her. From the open doorway of her therapy room, Lila observed the newcomer. Young, calm, not overdressed like the others. No clipboard, no fake smile. Just someone who stood quietly, hands at her sides, letting Lila look. Maya approached slowly, crouched beside the chair. "Hi, Leela. I'm Maya. You probably don't want to talk today. That's okay." No response. "But I'm here. For as long as you'll have me. No rush." Still. Silence. Maya noticed Lila's fingers twitching under the blanket, a barely there rhythm. She didn't mention it, not yet. Instead, she smiled and said, "I brought a violin, but it doesn't know this house yet. It won't play until you say it can." Lila blinked once, and though she said nothing, Maya thought she saw the smallest flicker. Not warmth, not trust, but curiosity. A start. Maya had worked with many children before. Some hid their grief behind tantrums. Others buried it beneath false cheer. But Lila Delaney, she had chosen silence as her shield. The therapy room looked more like a laboratory than a place for healing. Everything had been arranged with perfect symmetry. Resistance bands hanging like surgical tools. Mats rolled with military precision. Timers set to chime every 15 minutes. There was no art on the walls, no color, just a whiteboard that read, Monday, 9:00. Core activation, 10:00. Lower limb tactile response, 11. Kinger, seated balance series, 12:30. Lunch protein, plus carb ratio, 3. Maya didn't need a manual to know this place had been designed by someone who feared chaos more than pain. That someone was Graham Delaney. He watched from the doorway as Maya began unpacking her equipment. Notebooks, foam rollers, pulse monitors, nothing that suggested she'd disobeyed protocol. The violin remained in its case, untouched, leaning in the corner like a respectful guest waiting for permission. "You're not deviating from her scheduled set?" Graham asked, his voice low. "No," Maya said, "not today." "Good." He nodded once. "Expect daily logs. Use the forms my assistant prepared, of course. And if she doesn't respond." Maya looked over at Lila, who was staring blankly at the floor from her wheelchair. "Then I'll show up again tomorrow." Graham didn't reply. He just turned and walked away, the way people do when they've grown too used to walking alone. Lila's first session lasted exactly 52 minutes. She didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't even frown. She moved through the motions like a wind-up doll, mechanical, precise, completely absent. Maya guided her gently but firmly through each task, praising small efforts without overdoing it. She never forced conversation, only narrated what she was doing in a soft, almost melodic voice. "Let's reach up and stretch. Lila, I'll count with you. 1, 2, 3. No response. I'll do it with you." She mirrored every movement beside her, quietly modeling the exercises as if it were a dance meant for two invisible partners. Lila watched her out of the corner of her eye just for a second. That was enough for Maya to know Lila hadn't given up. She was just afraid to be seen trying. Lunchtime was another silent ritual. The kitchen was cathedral-like in its formality. Marble counters, stainless steel appliances, a table so large, Maya wondered why it wasn't in a boardroom. Lila sat at one end, Graham at the other, two place settings between them, untouched. No one spoke. Lila ate half a boiled egg, 2 slices of apple, and a portion of rice precisely measured by Constance earlier that morning. Graham sipped black coffee. Tapping through business forecasts on his tablet, Maya stood just outside the dining room, watching quietly. This wasn't a meal. It was a performance of absence. After 10 minutes, Lila rolled away from the table on her own, her chair moving almost silently across the polished floor. Graham didn't look up, and Maya felt her chest ache at the space between them. That night, Maya sat in her room with the violin on her lap, her fingers tracing the curves of the wood but never lifting the bow. She didn't play. Not yet. Instead, she pulled out a leather-bound journal. The first page read, Delaney Household, Day 1. Observe. Don't intervene. She began to write. Lila is not unreachable. She's watching, listening, waiting. Her silence isn't rejection, it's caution. She's a survivor in a place where emotion has been packed away like winter coats in summer. And the man downstairs, the one who built this fortress, he's grieving, too, but his grief has rules. It wears a suit. It speaks in data. It fears what it can't predict. She paused, pen hovering over the page. Tomorrow, I'll sit beside Lila while she eats, not to make her talk, just to let her know she's not alone at the table. She closed the journal, then glanced at the violin again. Still waiting. On day 2, Maya noticed something new. As Lila gripped the parallel bars during upper body training, her fingers tapped faintly, not to a rhythm. But in reaction to one, Maya leaned in, her voice casual. What are you listening to? No answer. But the tapping stopped, then resumed. Just a little faster, later that afternoon, while helping Lila adjust her posture in the wheelchair. Maya caught a glimpse of something tucked beneath the seat cushion. She didn't reach for it, but she recognized the cord of a music player tangled, worn, loved, and for the first time, Maya smiled. This girl still had music in her. That evening, Graham confronted her outside the therapy room. She doesn't need a friend, he said. She needs recovery, discipline, doctors. She needs to feel safe enough to try. Maya replied gently. She'll never walk again, if that's what you think. Maya looked at him, steady. That's not what I think. He folded his arms. Then, what is it you think you're doing here? Maya met his eyes without flinching. I'm showing her she matters. Even if she never walks again, even if she never speaks, she deserves more than drills and silence. A beat passed between them, and for just a flicker, Graham's face softened. Just a little. Then the mask returned. I expect your logs by 9, he said, turning away. Maya nodded. Of course. But as he walked down the hall, she whispered more to herself than anyone else. Logs don't track the soul. It was raining when Maya found the hidden drawer. Not that she'd been looking for it, not exactly. She was searching for resistance bands in the storage cabinet beside the therapy room when her fingers caught on an edge beneath the bottom shelf. A false panel, thin but noticeable. She pressed against it lightly. Click. The panel swung open. Inside were 2 dusty hard drives, labeled in Juliet's handwriting, Lila, dance practice, 5, 6, we or family moments backup. Maya stared at them. Notebooks and USB cables were stacked beneath, along with a small handheld camcorder, the kind people used before smartphones took over everything. She closed the cabinet softly, glancing over her shoulder. The house was still. Constance was upstairs. Graham was in his home office, undoubtedly poring over quarterly earnings or litigation summaries. Lila was napping in her room, music player faintly audible under her blanket. Maya placed the drives into her therapy bag, not to keep them, just to return them later. Carefully, but something in her chest stirred. Why were these memories hidden? She would find out soon enough. That night, after Lila had gone to bed, Maya sat on the rug in her guest room. Rain tapped gently against the windows. She connected the smaller drive to her laptop. No password prompt, just a folder. Delaney family videos. Inside, 47 files. Most were small, under a minute. A few longer. She clicked the first one. Static for a moment. Then, Juliet's voice. Okay, Lila. First position. The screen filled with a young Lila, no older than 5. dressed in a pink tutu, her legs wobbling but determined. She grinned at the camera, then looked toward someone off frame. Juliet's voice again. Remember, baby dancing isn't about being perfect. It's about feeling like you're flying. Maya let the video play all the way through. Lila stumbled, laughed, tried again. In every frame, Juliet was there gently guiding, never correcting too harshly. The room was full of warmth, love in motion, and just barely in the corner, Maya noticed Graham, sitting on the couch, still in a blazer, watching, not smiling, but not distant either. Something in him, even then, had resisted softness. The next day, Maya found Lila especially withdrawn, her posture more slouched, her movement stiffer. During arm stretches, Maya asked softly, "Rough dreams last night?" Lila said nothing, but her grip on the therapy bar tightened. Maya tried again. "Your mom had a beautiful voice." The girl flinched. I found some videos. I shouldn't have, but they were there, of you dancing. With her." Lila's chin trembled, but she didn't speak. Her lower lip pulled inward. She said, "Dancing made you feel like flying." Was that true? A pause. Then, so quiet Maya almost missed it. Yes, it was the first word Lila had spoken in front of her, and it sounded like a crack in a glacier small, but full of promise. Maya documented the moment in her journal that night. She remembered, not just the dance, but the feeling. We're not just trying to rehabilitate muscles. We're trying to reclaim a part of her identity that got buried under grief. She hesitated, then added another line. "Graham hasn't seen those videos in years, has he? I wonder what would happen if he did." The question lingered in her mind, and before sleep took her, she knew she had to show him. But not yet. 2 days later, Maya set up the therapy room early. She brought in a small Bluetooth speaker, discreet, tucked in beside the exercise bands. As Lila wheeled in, Maya greeted her with a warm smile. "Same routine today," she said gently. But, with a little extra, Lila eyed the speaker suspiciously. Maya clicked it on. The room filled with the soft strains of Swan Lake. Lila's head jerked toward the sound. Eyes wide, her fingers twitched again, faster this time, in sync with the music. "I can turn it off," Maya offered quickly. "Only if you want." But Lila shook her head. Slowly, Maya guided her through arm extensions, chest openings. With each repetition, Lila's shoulders relaxed slightly. Her breath deepened. By the end of the 30-minute set, Lila was humming, barely audible. But there, Maya didn't say a word. She just smiled. That evening, Graham summoned Maya to his office. The door was already open when she arrived. He didn't look up from his desk. "You played music during today's therapy," he said without greeting. "Yes, you deviated from the manual." "I did." Silence stretched between them. Then Maya placed the portable drive on his desk. He frowned. "What's that?" "Something Juliet recorded. I found it in the therapy room. You should watch it. I don't have time for sentiment." "Miss Santiago." "It's not sentiment," Maya replied. "It's context. It's your daughter's life, the part of her that existed before the accident, the part she still remembers. Even if you're too scared to." Graham's mouth hardened. "I didn't ask for your psychological analysis." "No," Maya said softly, "but I'm giving it to you anyway." She turned and left without waiting for permission. Later that night, long after the house fell quiet, Graham sat alone in his office, scotch untouched beside him, the house echoing with the same silence he claimed to prefer. He plugged in the drive, double-clicked the file labeled Lila Swan Lake Final. M4. The screen flickered. There was Lila smaller, laughing, twirling. Juliet's voice called out the beats, her arms moving beside their daughter. guiding without interfering. The music swelled. The camera wobbled as Graham's own laughter muffled. Brief entered the soundscape. It startled him. He had forgotten what his own laughter sounded like. On screen, Lila collapsed into Juliet's arms. Juliet kissed her forehead. "Promise me," she whispered. "No matter what happens, keep dancing." The screen froze, and Graham sat in the dark, hands covering his face, breath catching. Not sobbing, but close. The air in the therapy room felt warmer now, not just from the sunlight that pooled gently through the high windows, but from the sound. Music had returned to the house, not blaring, not forced, but present. Soft strings and classical melodies flowed through sessions like a quiet current, something for Lila to lean on. Each day, her posture improved. She stayed engaged longer. Her shoulders no longer curled inward like she was trying to disappear. And she was humming. Not every moment, but enough. Maya never commented on it. She just matched her tone, humming softly alongside her during stretches or resistance work. Every time Lila whispered a lyric, Maya recorded it later in her notebook. Day 19. Lila initiated 3 spontaneous vocalizations during core therapy, responded emotionally to movement paired with Swan Lake, displayed rhythmic tapping in both hands. Progress, real progress. But Maya also knew it wasn't the kind of progress Graham tracked, and he was about to find out. That afternoon, she made a bold decision. For their last session of the day, Maya dimmed the overhead lights and brought Lila into the wide floor space of the therapy room, an area usually reserved for mobility training. "I want to try something new," she said, keeping her tone gentle. "Just a few steps, not walking, just moving. With me." Lila blinked. "Like dancing." Maya smiled. "Exactly like dancing." She helped Lila out of her chair using the support harness, adjusting the straps so the little girl's feet touched the mat. Lila wobbled slightly, but Maya caught her. "Ready?" Lila nodded. Maya picked up her phone and hit play. Claire de Lune by Debussy floated into the air, soft and hesitant like footsteps on new snow. Together, they began to move. Maya guided Lila's arms through arcs, helped her rotate her torso, helped her feel the rhythm, not just count beats, but ride them. Lila giggled once, catching herself mid-step. "I'm floating," she whispered. "You are," Maya said, and for a moment, they were suspended, not in space, but in memory. Maya could feel it, the soul of the little girl who had danced in videos long buried, now alive and reaching again. But in the hallway, footsteps approached, heavy, sharp. The door creaked open, and everything shattered. Graham stood frozen in the doorway. His daughter was in a support harness, standing, moving, laughing, and Maya was holding her, guiding her. Music swelled in the background. Debussy, his late wife's favorite. Maya saw him the moment he stepped in, the flicker in his eyes, the tight clench of his jaw. Lila froze. Maya instinctively steadied her. "It's okay," she whispered. "Just stay still." Graham's voice sliced the air. "What the hell is going on in here?" Lila flinched. Maya's body tightened, bracing. "Mr. Delaney," she started. Calm. Measured. "You lifted her without medical clearance. What if she'd fallen? What if you—" "She didn't," Maya said firmly. "I used the harness, followed safety protocol. She's well within her range of motion for partial support exercises. That's not the issue." "No." Maya's tone remained level. "Then what is—" "That she smiled, that she's moving again, that she spoke to me today." "She spoke." Maya nodded, more than once. Graham faltered for just a moment, then regrouped. "You violated every instruction I gave. No support standing without physician approval. No unsanctioned movements. No music therapy. Your manual, Maya said carefully, was written for a child in survival mode. Lila is no longer surviving. She's starting to live. You don't get to make that call. No, Maya replied, stepping forward. But neither do you, not alone. Graham's eyes flashed. You're fired, Lila gasped. No, she said suddenly, louder than she'd spoken in months. Daddy, don't. He turned to her, stunned. She made me feel like myself again, Lila said, voice trembling. Please, don't send her away. For a full minute, the only sound was the fading music behind them. Then Graham looked at Maya, something unreadable in his expression. I want you out of this house by tonight. Maya didn't argue. She helped Lila back into her chair, brushed a strand of hair from the girl's face. I'll always be proud of you, she whispered. Lila nodded, biting her lip to keep from crying. An hour later, Maya's belongings were packed. Her violin case rested at the top of her suitcase, unopened. She left the leather-bound journal, the one where she documented every moment of progress on the kitchen counter. She didn't leave a note, but she knew the words were already written. Graham stood alone in the therapy room that night. The Bluetooth speaker was still on the shelf. The air smelled faintly of lavender and violin rosin. He walked over to the journal. Its spine was cracked, pages worn. He flipped to a random entry. Day 17. Lila cried for the first time during therapy. It wasn't from pain. It was from memory. The body doesn't just remember trauma, it remembers joy. If you let it. He read another. Day 21. Lila said she doesn't want to forget what her mother's voice sounded like. She wants to dance again. I told her she never really stopped. Graham sat down slowly. For the first time in 2 years, he let the silence settle without pushing it away. He wasn't angry anymore. He was terrified. Terrified that he had finally found someone who could reach his daughter, and that he'd driven her out. Upstairs, Lila lay in bed with tears streaking silently down her face. Her fingers tapped the rhythm of Claire de Lune against her blanket. She didn't know if Maya would come back, but she knew now that her own voice could still rise when it mattered, and that meant something. The house felt heavier without her. It wasn't the absence of sound. There had always been silence in the Delaney household, but now it was a different silence. Not cold, not ordered, just hollow. Graham sat in the therapy room well past midnight. The lights were off. The Bluetooth speaker was still on the shelf, dusty in the moonlight. The scent of Maya's essential oils lingered in the corners, like her presence was unwilling to leave. He'd told himself he was protecting Lila, but as he read through more pages of the journal Maya had left behind, something inside him cracked open. Day 12. Lila hesitates when praised. It's as if no one's told her she's doing well in a very long time. Day 20. Her silence isn't passive, it's guarded. She's choosing not to trust. That's not disobedience, it's trauma. Day 23. I believe Graham loves her. But love without warmth is a locked door, and she's knocking. That last line felt like a verdict. A painful one. Upstairs, Lila couldn't sleep either. She clutched her music player to her chest. The earbuds tangled like vines across her pillow. She hadn't spoken since Maya left, not even to Constance. She'd skipped lunch, pushed away dinner. She didn't want to eat in a room where nobody listened. At 2, there says Cora. She whispered one word, Maya, and started crying quiet sobs that no one heard but the walls. Graham had always prided himself on control. Control made empires rise. But at that moment, staring at a house that had felt more like a mausoleum since Juliet's death, he realized something devastating. He had built a fortress to protect his daughter from loss, and in doing so, he'd buried her alive in it. He picked up his phone, paused, stared at Maya's contact, thumb hovering. Then he tapped. The phone rang twice before going to voicemail. He hesitated, then started speaking. His voice wasn't polished, not this time. "Hi, it's Graham. I know it's late. I know you have every reason not to call me back. But I need to say something. I was wrong. About everything. About what Lila needed. About how to help her. About you." He exhaled, shaky. "I'm not asking you to come back for me. I'm asking if you'd be willing to come back for her. Just once. I'll stay out of the way. I'll listen this time." A pause. "She asked for you, Maya. She spoke your name." The silence on the line was almost unbearable. "I'll be awake, just in case." He ended the call and waited. Maya didn't sleep much anymore. Not since she left Somerton Ridge. She'd returned to her quiet home in Riverview. The lavender tea she once enjoyed now sat untouched on the kitchen counter. Her violin remained unopened in its case, like a chapter she wasn't ready to reread. She listened to Graham's voicemail twice. The first time in disbelief, the second time with her eyes closed. Not because he sounded desperate, but because he sounded real. And it had taken him this long to sound that way. She picked up her phone, tapped back, texted just 4 words. "She asked for me." Graham replied instantly, "Yes, by name." Then another message. She cried, "I didn't know what to do." Maya stared at the screen, then texted, "I'll be there by morning." When Maya arrived at 6:45 a.m., the front door was already open. Constance was waiting. "You've no idea how much she needs you," the house manager whispered. Maya gave a soft nod. "I'm here for her. That hasn't changed. And him." Maya looked toward the hallway, where Graham stood not in a suit, but in a sweatshirt and jeans. He looked older, smaller. "I don't know yet," Maya said honestly, "but I'm listening." She walked past him without waiting for permission. This time, she didn't need it. Lila was in her chair by the window, her face pressed to the glass like she was waiting for the clouds to move. When Maya entered, Lila turned just barely, and then her whole face crumpled. "Maya," she whispered, tears rising. Maya dropped to her knees beside the chair. "I'm here. Sweet girl, I'm here." And Lila, without prompting, leaned forward and hugged her. It was awkward and fragile and perfect. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lila said, "I dreamed you were gone forever." Maya stroked her hair. "No dream could keep me away. Not when you called me back." Lila didn't say anything after that. She just held on tighter. Down the hall, Graham watched from a distance. He didn't interrupt, didn't speak, didn't demand reports or protocols. He just stood there, hands shaking at his sides. For the first time since Juliet died, he wasn't in charge. And strangely, that made him feel more human than he had in years. Sunlight warmed the hardwood floor as Lila gripped the parallel bars again. But this time, something was different. She wasn't afraid. Maya stood at her side, calm and steady, her hand gently guiding Lila's lower back for support. There was no timer counting down, no therapist waiting to mark a form, no cold silence breathing down her neck. There was just music faint, barely audible, and Maya's soft encouragement. "You don't have to do it all today," Maya whispered. "Just feel the floor. Let it know you're here." Lila nodded once. She took a breath, and then, with effort that trembled through her shoulders and jaw, she shifted her left foot forward. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't strong, but it was hers. One step. Maya gasped, smiling. "You did it." Lila's lips twitched upward, the first full smile Maya had seen. "I want to try again," the girl said, and this time, her voice didn't shake. Graham didn't see it happen. Not directly, but he heard the soft shuffle of Lila's shoes against the floor, heard Maya's quiet exhale, half joy, half disbelief. He stood just outside the therapy room, unseen, one hand gripping the doorframe. When he finally walked in, Lila was seated in her chair again, flushed but proud, her fingers fidgeting with the ends of her braid. Maya turned. She took a step. Graham blinked. Without full leg support, with the harness, but yes, she initiated the movement. She chose to try. Lila looked up at her father, eyes wide and hesitant, like she was afraid her accomplishment would somehow be punished. But Graham didn't scold, didn't frown. He knelt beside her slowly. "You stepped," he said. Lila nodded. "That's incredible." The words sounded foreign in his mouth, too soft, too raw. Lila gave a shy smile. It felt like dancing. His breath caught. "I remember," he said, voice cracking. "When you were 5, you twirled in the hallway until you got dizzy. Your mom had to catch you before you fell." Lila's eyes shimmered. "You laughed," she said. "I thought you never laughed." "I didn't for a long time," he admitted. "But that day, I did." Silence settled. Then Lila whispered, "I miss her every day." Graham looked down, his voice trembling. "Me too, sweetheart. More than I know how to say." And Maya, standing nearby, felt the tension in the room shift, the heavy grief that had once pushed them apart, now drawing them closer. That night, Graham didn't retreat to his office. He joined Lila for dinner. It was the first time they had shared a full meal since Juliet's funeral. Constance made grilled salmon and mashed potatoes, simple and warm. Lila ate slowly, but with appetite. Maya sat at the table too. Per Lila's request, there was laughter, not loud, but real, and when Lila asked to say grace before eating, Graham bowed his head without hesitation. It felt like a beginning. Later, as Maya packed up her notebook, Graham stopped by the guest room. He knocked once. "Can I come in?" Maya looked up. "Of course." He stepped inside and didn't sit, just hovered awkwardly near the bookshelf. "I read every page," he said quietly. "Your journal. Every note, every feeling, every observation. I didn't leave it to accuse you," she replied. "I left it because I thought she'd need it after I was gone." He nodded. "I deserved the criticism." "That's not what it was." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, Maya saw the man behind the CEO, not the one who built empires, but the one who had lost everything and didn't know how to grieve out loud. "I didn't know how to raise her alone," he confessed. "After Juliet died, I put all my grief into checklists, schedules, outcomes. I thought if I controlled everything, I could protect her from breaking. But she was already broken," Maya said gently. "And so were you." He nodded. "I see that now." A long pause passed between them. Then he added, "Thank you for not giving up on her." "She didn't give up on herself," Maya said. "She just needed someone to believe she could come back." "And what about me?" he asked. "Do you believe I can come back?" Maya met his gaze, not soft, not hard, but steady. "I believe everyone has a door, even if it's been locked for years." Graham smiled, just barely. "And what do I do with the key?" Maya tilted her head. "You knock that weekend." Graham made a change. He removed the rigid hour-by-hour therapy board and replaced it with a new one that included things like story time, dance practice, Daddy and me game hour, music request, Lila's choice. He brought Juliet's photo down from the hall and placed it on the kitchen mantel. Framed beside Lila's latest drawing, a scribbled image of a girl with braces dancing beneath a tree. And on Sunday evening, he did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He sat beside his daughter and read her a bedtime story. When she drifted off, hand curled in his, he looked over his shoulder. Maya stood quietly in the doorway, tears in her eyes. Graham whispered. "You saved both of us." And Maya, with a voice soft but certain, replied, "You just remembered how to reach her." The idea came from Lila, not Maya, not Graham, not a therapist or counselor. It was a quiet Thursday morning. The sun had just started streaming into the therapy room, casting gentle gold patterns on the floor. Lila sat in her chair, humming softly as she twirled a strand of hair around her finger. "Do you think I could perform again someday?" she asked, voice small but hopeful. Maya turned toward her. "What do you mean? Dance? In front of people? Not big crowds. Just someone who mattered." Maya smiled gently. "Who do you want to dance for?" Lila hesitated. Then, without looking up, she whispered, "Mom." The room grew still. Outside, the wind stirred the maple trees. Inside, Maya knelt beside her and took her hand. "You already do," she said. "Every time you move, every time you try, she sees you." "But I want Dad to see it too," Lila said. "Not just my body working again. I want him to see me. The way Mom did." Maya's eyes softened. "Then we'll make it happen." The next few days were filled with careful preparation. Lila picked the music herself. A soft, instrumental piano piece Juliet used to play on the old baby grand in the living room. Maya helped her modify the choreography seated in her chair, with some supported standing movements from the harness. There would be no twirls, but there would be grace, and heart, and memory. Maya turned one of the open sunrooms into a makeshift stage. She brought in soft lighting, covered the windows with linen drapes to create ambiance, and rolled out the pale blue mat from the therapy room. Graham was kept in the dark at Lila's request. "I want to surprise him," she said, like Mom used to surprise him. So Maya helped Lila record a little invitation, a shaky video on Maya's phone, just a few seconds long. "Hi, Daddy," Lila said, cheeks red but eyes glowing. "Can you come to the sunroom at 7 tonight? I have something I want to show you. It's for Mom and for you. At 6, Tinksentnam P." Graham stood just outside the sunroom. He hadn't worn a tie. For once, he'd dressed down soft navy sweater, sleeves rolled, socks mismatched. The formality that once kept him armored had faded these past few weeks, replaced with something he hadn't known how to name, something closer to presence. When he stepped inside, he saw Lila in her chair, dressed in a soft ivory blouse and a pale pink scarf tied around her waist, Juliet's old rehearsal sash. The room was lit by soft floor lamps, their glow amber and gentle. Maya stood quietly in the corner. Graham's throat tightened. "Is this?" Lila nodded. "A performance." He took a seat on the couch, the one Juliet used to collapse into after long rehearsals. The music began. There were no grand movements, no pirouettes, no wide sweeps or athletic leaps. But what Lila created in that room was something greater than dance. It was a remembrance. Her arms moved gently in rhythm, each gesture deliberate. Like she was sculpting air, she lifted her right leg, slowly, with Maya's assistance, and extended her torso forward in a motion that mimicked Juliet's old warm-up routine. Her head tilted back to the light, and then she stood, only for a moment, held up by the harness, swaying gently like a leaf on a branch. But she stood and smiled and bowed. Graham's hands covered his face. When the music ended, there was no applause, only the sound of quiet tears. Lila looked at him. "Do you think Mom would have liked it?" Graham stood slowly. His voice cracked as he walked to her. "She would have loved it," he said. "She would have told you. You were magic." Lila's eyes welled. "She used to call me her little swan." Graham kneeled and placed a kiss on her forehead. "She still does." That night, the house felt different, full, somehow, not of noise, but of connection. Later, Graham found Maya in the kitchen, rinsing a mug at the sink. "She planned the whole thing?" he asked. Maya nodded. "She wanted it to be her gift." "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Maya said softly. "You just have to keep showing up for her." He looked down, nodding slowly. Then, after a pause, he spoke again. "She blamed me. You know, Juliet." Maya didn't move. Graham continued, voice low. "The night before the accident, we fought. She wanted to quit the board, focus more on Lila. I told her she was throwing her career away." He paused. "I went to bed angry. She left the house early the next morning. She died on her way to a teaching workshop. Black ice. No one's fault, but you never forgave yourself." Maya finished gently. "No," he admitted. "And Lila, she never said it out loud," he said. "But I always feared she knew, that I'd made her mother feel unseen." Maya turned to him. "She wasn't unseen," she said firmly. "She was a mother who loved her daughter so much. She tried to be everything at once. And you, Graham, you were trying to hold the sky together while the ground collapsed." He looked at her, eyes glistening. "I failed her." "No," Maya whispered. "You just forgot how to dance." And in that moment, neither of them was a caregiver or a CEO. They were just two people, grieving, healing, breathing in the same soft night. The house had changed. Not its architecture. The stone walls still stood strong. The hardwood floors still gleamed in morning light. And Juliet's baby Grand still sat in the corner of the sunroom. But it felt different, warmer, more lived in, more hopeful. Where once Lila's chair barely left the therapy room, now she moved freely between the kitchen, the garden, and even Graham's office, often with a book in her lap and a question at the ready. Her voice was growing stronger. Her laughter came more easily, and every Sunday, like clockwork, she danced. Small movements, modest gestures, but always with music, always for Juliet. One morning, while Maya was organizing Lila's adaptive tools, she found a box in the back of Graham's office. Inside were Juliet's old journals. Most were from her early career as a dance therapist, field notes, teaching techniques, music response case studies, but one stood out. A red, leather-bound volume marked Juliet's Dream, Inclusive Dance for All Children. Maya turned to the first page. "One day, I'll start a school, not just for dancers, but for dreamers, kids with cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, autism, kids who move differently, feel differently but who deserve to fly." Maya's throat tightened. She closed the book and walked straight to Graham's office. "You need to see this," she said. He looked up from his desk, brow furrowing. "What is it?" She handed him the journal. He flipped through the pages in silence. His jaw clenched. His hand trembled on the spine. "This was her dream," Maya said, "and I think it should live again." By the end of the week, the plan was in motion. Graham called in his legal team. Maya contacted a nonprofit consultant she knew from her early childhood development work. Constance offered to help coordinate outreach, and even Lila chimed in with a name, the Juliet Movement, because it's about more than dancing. She explained, "It's about choosing to move forward." Graham stared at his daughter for a long moment after she said it, then nodded. "It's perfect." The foundation launched quietly. No press blitz, no gala, no high society ribbon cutting. Just a simple website, a short video of Lila explaining why movement matters, and a mission to create inclusive dance programs for children of all abilities, not to fix them, but to celebrate them. Within a month, applications poured in, grants, donations, inquiries from physical therapists and special education schools across the Pacific Northwest, People didn't just want to support it. They needed it. Maya sat with Graham one evening, reviewing program designs. She looked up from her notes. "This is going to change lives," she said. Graham smiled, tired but proud, starting with mine. But not everyone approved. At a board meeting of Delaney Tech, one of the firm's senior partners leaned across the long walnut table, voice sharp. "You're reallocating personal funds to a foundation that doesn't serve our core business model." Graham didn't flinch. "It serves my legacy," he said. "And if the company can't survive my decision to fund a dream my daughter and late wife believed in, then maybe we've forgotten what we're building for." Silence fell. Then, one by one, the other board members nodded. A vote passed, unanimously. 2 weeks later, Graham stood at the front of a former warehouse in downtown Lakehurst. The space had been donated by a local real estate developer who had seen Lila's story online. The front door was propped open. Sunlight spilled across the polished concrete floor, where foam mats and mobility bars lined the edges. A mural had been painted across the back wall, Juliet, arms wide in mid-dance, surrounded by children of all kinds, some in chairs, some with walkers, some just smiling. Lila's idea. She'd chosen every color. When Graham stepped inside, Lila wheeled beside him. "Do you think she'd be proud?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. He just bent down, kissed her cheek, and said, "She already is." Later that evening, back at home, Lila wrote in her own journal a tradition she'd picked up from Maya. "Today, I watched Daddy smile for real. Not polite smile, not business smile. Real one, the kind Mom used to talk about." I think maybe the foundation helped him remember who he was before the sadness. She paused, then added, "And I think Maya's part of that, too. She brings music back into rooms where silence used to win." In her guest room, Maya reread Juliet's last journal entry, the one she hadn't shown Graham yet. "If something ever happens to me, I hope Graham finds his way back through Lila. She's his lighthouse. And if someone out there is guiding her, maybe he'll follow the light too." Maya closed the book and smiled through her tears. Juliet had been right. Lila was the lighthouse. And now, finally, Graham was steering home. The Juliet movement had barely been open 3 months when the story broke. A local paper in Lakehurst, known more for its property listings than journalism, published a feature titled, "The Man Behind the Movement, Graham Delaney's Sudden Shift from CEO to Advocate." At first, it seemed flattering. There were quotes from Foundation volunteers, a few glowing lines about Lila's video, and praise for the new center's inclusive model, but halfway through the article, the tone changed. Sources close to the Delaney family report that Juliet Delaney had planned to resign from her company board before her fatal accident. Internal conflicts with her husband over their daughter's care may have played a role in the tragic morning she lost her life. It was a single paragraph, but it detonated like a grenade. Within hours, the Foundation's inbox filled with questions. Graham's phone rang nonstop. Reporters camped near the gates of the estate, and Lila, who hadn't read the article, could sense something was wrong. "I heard Constance whispering on the phone," Lila said quietly that evening. She sounded scared. Maya exchanged a look with Graham, who sat frozen on the couch, a copy of the newspaper still folded on his lap. Lila continued, "Is it because of the article?" Maya knelt beside her. "What do you know about it?" "Just that they said something bad about Daddy." "About Mom, too?" Graham stood up slowly, then sat again. Eyes haunted. "Maya," he said softly, "can we have a moment?" Maya nodded, squeezed Lila's shoulder, and stepped out. Graham faced his daughter, He looked older than usual, not tired, but worn down, like the past had come to sit beside him. "There's something I've never told you," he began. Lila waited. "You know your mom died in a car accident, but you don't know what happened before she left that morning." Lila's face tightened. "Were you fighting?" Graham nodded. "She wanted to step back from her job, spend more time with you. She was tired, stretched too thin, and I didn't listen. I told her she was overreacting." Tears filled his eyes. "She left the house upset, and then the ice. It wasn't anyone's fault, but I've carried that morning with me every day since." Lila was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Did she know you loved her?" Graham choked out the words. "Yes." "God." "Yes." "Then she forgave you," Lila whispered. He looked at her, stunned. "Mom always said love doesn't keep score." Lila added, "She forgave me when I broke her necklace." "She forgave you too?" Graham bent forward and took her hands. "You shouldn't have to carry this weight for me." "I'm not," she said. "I'm carrying with you." And with that, the storm inside Graham finally broke. He sobbed for the first time in front of his daughter, and this time, it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like release. Later that night, Maya joined him in the kitchen. "You told her everything?" she asked gently. He nodded. "She handled it better than I ever did." Maya poured him a cup of tea and sat across from him. "Kids can do that," she said. "They break open grief without fear. Adults, we just wrap it in silence." He smiled faintly. "You ever wonder what Juliet would say about all this?" Maya paused. "She'd tell you to stop doubting yourself," she said. "And then she'd tell you to check Lila's socks, because they never match." Graham laughed, really laughed, and it startled even him. "I don't know what this family would be without you," he said. Maya looked down at her tea. "You'd be a family," she said quietly. "You already are." The next day, Graham held a press conference on the steps of the Juliet Movement's main hall. Reporters crowded in, ready for scandal. But what they got was something else. Graham stepped to the podium. No script in hand, no teleprompter, just truth. "My late wife was the soul of this foundation," he began. "And yes, we disagreed before she passed. About our schedules, about our daughter's care, about a million things. We were parents in pain." He paused. "But that doesn't mean I didn't love her, and it doesn't mean she wasn't right." He looked directly into the cameras. She wanted this place to exist. She wanted Lila to feel seen, not fixed. "And if anyone has questions about my motives, I invite them to visit. Sit with the kids, watch them move." Then he stepped aside, and Lila wheeled herself forward, in front of flashing bulbs and microphones. She spoke with a clarity that silenced the lawn. "My mom wasn't perfect, but she believed that dancing could help kids speak without words. She taught me that movement is a kind of voice." She looked at her dad. "And I got my voice back because someone believed I still had one." The press didn't know what to ask after that, because some stories don't need defending. They just need telling. The stage was modest, a repurposed community hall in downtown Lakehurst. But to the children performing that day, it might as well have been Broadway. Colorful scarves hung from the rafters. Twinkling lights framed the curtain. And the front row was packed with parents, therapists, teachers, and strangers who had been touched by the Juliet Movement story. It was the Foundation's first public recital, and Lila was the closing act. Backstage, she sat in her chair, wearing a soft lavender dress, her curls pulled back with a silver ribbon. Graham paced gently behind the curtain, wringing his hands nervous, but trying not to show it. "Daddy," Lila said with a grin, "you're gonna wear a groove in the floor." He chuckled. "It's just a big day for all of us," Maya added. Kneeling beside Lila with one last check of her harness, Lila looked at her. "Are you leaving after today?" Maya blinked. "Why would you ask that?" "I overheard Constance. Something about a job offer." Maya hesitated, then nodded. "A clinic in Seattle. Specialized pediatric therapy. They've asked me to lead a full program. Are you going to take it?" Maya didn't answer right away. Instead, she smoothed the folds of Lila's dress and whispered, "Let's dance first." The program began with a short speech from Graham Hartfelt. "Sincere. This recital isn't about perfection," he said to the crowd. "It's about possibility." Then the lights dimmed. One by one, children of all abilities performed. Some rolled, some swayed, some moved only their hands. But each child radiated joy, their motions filled with pride, courage, and the unmistakable echo of Juliet's vision. By the time Lila's name was announced, the room was quiet with reverence. She wheeled herself onto the stage, Maya walking beside her. A pianist began to play a slowed, gentle version of Claire de Lune. And then, with help from the support bar at center stage, Lila stood. Gasps rippled through the audience. Maya steadied her gently. Lila's arms moved with grace, her hands forming soft arcs in the air. Each shift of weight was careful, practiced. Her foot brushed the mat, and then she turned, just once, a tiny pivot, made possible by months of therapy, courage, and belief. The spotlight glowed golden on her face, and in the front row, Graham Delaney cried without shame, without restraint as his daughter danced beneath the light her mother once lived in. Backstage, applause thundered through the walls. Maya helped Lila off stage, both of them glowing with a quiet joy. "I didn't fall," Lila whispered. "You flew," Maya said, brushing a tear from her cheek. But as they made their way back to the green room, Maya's expression grew distant. She stared at the framed photo on the wall, Juliet, smiling mid-rehearsal, arms open to the children around her. Then, gently, Maya turned to Graham. "I think I know my answer." He swallowed. "Seattle." She nodded. "They want me to build something new, and it's important work." Graham nodded slowly. "You should go. You deserve to grow. But it's not just about the job." Maya added, "It's about where I belong." He looked at her. "Quiet. I came here to help one child," she said, "and I fell in love with a whole family." His voice cracked. "You're part of it, Maya." "I know," she whispered. He stepped forward. "If this is goodbye, it's not," she said quickly. "It's just a new chapter." She turned to Lila, "But only if you're okay with it." Lila frowned, thinking hard, then reached for Maya's hand. "Will you still call me?" "Every day," Maya promised. "And come visit. Only if you make me pancakes when I do." They both smiled. Then, quietly, Maya added, "Or maybe we build something together. A satellite studio. You, me, and your dad. In Seattle, or here. Wherever kids need to move." Graham stared at her, heart catching. "You'd do that." Maya smiled. "I don't think I can stop." That night, the house was filled with flowers, laughter, and photo frames of the children mid-performance. Lila fell asleep early, a smile still on her face, her journal open beside her bed. "Tonight, I danced in front of the world, but I danced for Mom. I think she was with me. In the music, in the lights, in the way Dad stood up at the end. And Maya, she's still my lighthouse." In the guest room, Maya packed slowly. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time in years, she felt ready for change, not as an escape, but as a choice, a movement. The sky over Lakehurst was pale lavender, the kind Juliet used to paint in her notebooks, soft, not showy, but full of presence. It had been 6 weeks since the recital. 6 weeks since Maya boarded the train to Seattle to begin building the second studio. 6 weeks since Lila danced in front of a full audience and rewrote what it meant to stand tall. But today, the house wasn't quiet. Today was Juliet's birthday, and for the first time in 2 years, Graham wasn't dreading it. He stood in the garden, where Juliet once planted wild peonies, setting a small framed photo of her beneath the new tree Lila had chosen. A flowering dogwood, white blooms beginning to bud. Lila wheeled beside him, a handmade card in her lap, glitter and glue still fresh. "I wrote her a letter," she said softly. Graham smiled. "Can I read it?" She handed it to him. He read aloud. "Dear Mom, I danced. I stood. I moved. And Daddy saw me. Maya helped me believe. But you were the music. Happy birthday. I hope heaven has hardwood floors." His voice cracked. Then he bent down and placed the card beneath the tree, and for a long time they just sat in the stillness, father and daughter, both changed. That afternoon, a package arrived from Seattle. It was from Maya. Inside was a hand-stitched banner that read, "Juliet's Movement Seattle Studio opens June 1st." And beneath it, a note in Maya's elegant handwriting. "Lila, the first class is already full. One girl says she wants to fly just like you. Graham." We kept the colors you picked, and yes, the socks never match. Come visit soon. You've got something here too, a lighthouse of your own. The phrase stayed with Graham for days. A lighthouse of your own. He'd spent so long trying to steer the ship business. Grief. Legacy. He hadn't realized that Lila had already lit the way forward. She was the lighthouse. And Maya had shown them both how to keep the beam steady. On the first day of June, Graham and Lila arrived in Seattle. Lila wore a ribbon in her hair and a pin on her dress, a silver swan, Juliet's old symbol. The studio was airy and bright. Sunlight filtered through large windows, casting long soft shadows across polished floors. Children were already warming up, some dancing freely, some with walkers, others simply tapping their fingers to the beat. At the far end of the room, Maya stood with her clipboard, directing volunteers, laughing softly, fully at home. When she saw them, her eyes widened, and then she smiled like someone who had waited a long time for something she never dared hope for. Lila wheeled straight toward her. "You're late?" she teased. Maya laughed. "Traffic. You missed the warm-up," Maya said. "I didn't come to warm up," Lila replied. "I came to teach." Maya blinked. "You what?" Graham stepped forward, pulling a folded letter from his coat pocket. "Lila's school therapist sent this," he said. "She's been nominated as a youth mentor to co-lead a class for children with mobility challenges." Maya looked at Lila, stunned. "You said you wanted to build something new," Lila said. "So let me help." Maya knelt beside her. Tearful, "You already have." The first class began that day with 20 children in attendance. By the second week, there was a wait list. Graham offered to fund expansion. Maya politely declined and instead suggested they form a joint board to share decision-making across both studios. He agreed on one condition, that you keep bossing me around, he said. "I've grown to like it." They both laughed, and somewhere, Juliet's memory smiled too. A year later, on the anniversary of Juliet's passing, they hosted a dual recital in both Lakehurst and Seattle. Live streamed between studios, Lila opened the event with a short speech. "When my legs stopped working, I thought I'd never dance again. But the truth is, dancing isn't what your body does. It's what your heart dares." She paused, then added, "My mom once said movement is a kind of prayer, and I think maybe she was right, because every step we take now feels like a thank you." The audience was silent, then a standing ovation, even from those who couldn't stand. That evening, As Graham stood alone in the sunroom, now lined with children's artwork and program schedules, he turned to the piano and placed a hand on the keys. One note, then another. He hadn't played in years, but tonight he let the music return. Soft, simple, steady, like a lighthouse beam. Upstairs, Lila sat by her window, writing in her journal. I used to think lighthouses were big towers that stood alone, but now I think they're people like Maya, like Daddy, like Mom, and maybe even me, because sometimes all someone needs is to be seen, just once, just long enough to remember they can move. And the best lighthouses aren't the loudest. They're just the ones that stay lit no matter what. Not every hero walks. Some roll. Some stumble. Some simply choose to stay when it would have been easier to leave. In a world that too often overlooks children who move differently, this story reminds us dignity isn't given. It's reflected back by those who choose to see it. Lila stood not just on her feet, but in her truth. And when she danced, she didn't just honor her mother's memory. She exposed the silent cruelty of ableism and the quiet cost of emotional neglect. We must do better. For every child in a wheelchair who's told they're inspirational but never invited to lead. For every grieving parent afraid to open the door to healing. And for every caregiver who is more than just help, they are transformation in human form. Let this story stay with you. Let it move something deeper. And if it did, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that don't just entertain, they awaken. We'll see you in the next one, because some stories don't end. They keep dancing forward.